In this video, I'm going to go over pointing name servers. So what are name servers? Well, a name server is a specialized server on the internet that handles queries or questions from your local computer about the location of a domain's various services. So one IP address may be going directly to your homepage, and that's exactly what you want to go to. However, you have other services tied to your domain name, maybe like email or different things like that, different services. And so this is where you kind of configure and manage all of that. The best way to think of it is like a phone book. You may have a business line, a marketing line. Let's say your company has a sales side, different things. Let's say you have different numbers and stuff. So it's kind of a directory of saying, okay, where to point people and what's the numbers to get a hold of those different departments. And that's exactly what this is, and it manages that. So what are the steps? Well, for almost every single domain registrar out there, this is the steps that you're going to have to take in order to change your DNS settings and to modify them. Well, first off, you have to log in, then navigate to the domain management section. And then after that, you want to look for the DNS configuration settings. This is where you actually configure the DNS or point the domain name. All right, and then you're going to edit the records. And I'm going to show you some specific examples here in just a second. So if I'm on Hover.com, what you want to do is, again, go to the domain management section and then look for DNS settings and then click edit, and then you're going to come here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to DNS. And then what you're going to see is primarily the first one, front and center, is the @ record. And this is the primary one. It's the raw URL, so hnh.marketing. Now you may say, whoa, this isn't a .com. Well, this is another extension that you can use if you want. I use this as a secondary domain for my primary website, which is hnhmarketing.net, but in this case I'm using this as a secondary one, but I want to point it to the same place. So what I'm doing is I change my @ record, and I would hover over and go edit DNS, and I would point it at the IP address that I want to point it at. And depending on what hosting provider that you use, this will vary, but they will provide it, and once you find it, you can plug it in here and click save. And once it saves, then that IP address is exactly where the hosting server is storing your website, and your domain is pointed there so that people actually see your website when they type in your domain name. The second one here was the little asterisk. You can change that one as well. Great to do, and put that there pointing at the same direction. Now the CNAME and the MX records are for mail and different things like that, and you want to make sure that you set those up right. And if you use something like a mail server, or if you're setting up your hosting provider, something like that, you would need to change those settings. But for just pointing your domain name for the website, the only ones you really need to worry about is these right here, maybe a www, if your domain registrar provides that option. Now in GoDaddy, it's slightly different, but kind of the same type process. Go to your domain settings, and then what you're going to go looking for is the DNS zone file. And I'm using the new system, which is their most up-to-date one, but you may want to use the classic DNS manager if you've ever used that or are more comfortable with that. But in this case, I'm just going to use the current one. And similar to Hover, what you're going to do is you're going to see several different options, but the primary one right here is going to be your @ record. And you can change that, and to do that, what you're going to do is hover over here and click Edit Record, and it'll give you the options to change it here. Once you save that, that will point your website to the domain hosting provider. If you want to add an additional record, you can click Add Record, and you can change the record type just like on pretty much any domain registrar. And there's different reasons for adding these. Sometimes you'll add a text record for services like Google Apps or Google Analytics or things like that, or different services on the web to verify that you actually own the domain and different things like that. Some of the CNAME, MX records, stuff like that is going to be for email and services like that typically. But in our case, all you really need to worry about is pointing the @ record to the IP address that your website is hosted at. You will notice though, if I scroll down here, that there's a www address as well, and it's pointed at the @ record. So in this case, all you had to do is change the @ record here, and the FTP and the www part of the URL, all of those point to the @ record, the same IP address. You could manually put the IP address in here, but it's just easier to point them at the @ record. And these are CNAME aliases that really point to this, but this is the host record, the A record. Again, there are a lot of different domain registrars out there, but this process is fairly similar depending on which one that you're using. And Hover.com is my personal recommendation, and GoDaddy is probably my second recommendation. So between these two options, you should be able to see exactly how to configure your DNS settings and actually point your domain name and take your website live.